We have configured everything and we are ready to use Unity. This current scene is a template augmented reality and it is prepared by Unity. This scene can be built on a device or directly can be played from the editor. However, we will create an empty scene to learn everything by ourselves. There are 4 main panels: Project Panel, Hierarchy Panel, Inspector Panel, and the Scene Panel. This bottom tab is called the Project Panel. It includes everything in our project solution. All assets will be here, such as images, models, animations, sounds, scenes, and many more. Scenes are the place where you work with the content in Unity. There can be multiple scenes in a game, or one scene if it is a smaller game. For example, one scene for the main menu and one scene for the game is a popular approach for hyper-casual mobile games. Let's create a new scene and analyze the Unity interface. To create a new scene, from the Project panel, go to Scenes folder. Now right-click in this folder and select Create. Then press on the scene. And name it as anything you prefer. Then press Enter. And now we can double click on the newly created scene to open it. Our scene is created with a default camera and lights. And it is visible in the Hierarchy panel, which takes us to the second panel, in other words the Hierarchy. But before moving on to the Hierarchy panel, let's learn about the game objects. Game objects can be thought of as a container. And each game object has components that define the attributes of the game object. Game objects will help us to create blocks, images, characters, or even the user interface, camera and lights. And Hierarchy panel contains every game object that is in the current scene. The third panel is the Inspector. This panel is for setting the game object. From this panel, we can add components and change the properties of these components. Let's check the camera game object in our current scene as an example. By default, every game object has a component called the transform, which consists of position, rotation, and scale. Basically, everything in our game will be game objects with extra components. The camera game object has the camera component, with some additional components below. Thanks to this camera component, we are able to view the environment. You can move and rotate the camera however you like. For now, we will turn it back to its default. Let's create a 2D sprite object. First, we will create an empty game object from the hierarchy with a right click. Now click on this game object. And from the inspector, we will add the sprite renderer as a component. We can now select an image from the project panel. To use an image, we can simply drag any image from our computer to the project panel into any folder. I will open the asset folder and drag the image to this folder. It is important to convert the image to a sprite texture to be able to use it in the sprite renderer. To apply, click anywhere and press Save in the pop-up. The image I am using is available in the resources. Then we will drag this image to the sprite attribute. and the game object that shows our image is ready. If you are curious, you can try to change other attributes of the sprite renderer component, like the color, to see what happens. For now, we will just delete this game object, since we are mostly interested in 3D development. It is time to create a simple 3D cube. First, right-click in the hierarchy again. Then, find the cube from the 3D object section. We have created our cube. We can move, rotate, and scale the cube. To create cube, Unity by default added Mesh Filter, Mesh Renderer, and Box Collider components. You could have done the same thing from an empty game object, but thanks to Unity we can just instantiate a cube with a couple clicks. Any change we make inside the hierarchy panel will be visible to us in the Scene panel, which is the last default panel. Game objects can be scaled, moved, or rotated from here as well. Getting familiar with the Scene panel requires a bit of practice. An easy way to operate in the scene is using the Move tool. In this tool, we can look around by holding right-click. We can select the game object with a left click. We are able to zoom in and out with our scroll. Lastly, we can move in any direction by holding the scroll button. It is also possible to move any object just by dragging these axes, instead of typing in a value in the transform component. You can try other tools as well, like the rotate tool, to explore, but we will usually stick with the move tool. This section has another tab called the Game View, which shows how the game will look like when the game is running from the main camera. When we run the game, it automatically converts into this Game View. First, enter the positions of the cube as 0, 0, 0 for X, Y, and Z axis respectively, so that the cube will be visible in the game view. Let's run the game and view our game in the runtime. Here is our game. There is only a cube in the middle, so it can be hard to call this as a game. However, you can think this as the hello world of the Unity game engine.